All right, good evening. Good evening. It's Thursday, but there's no shipcast. There's no pick'ems, but we do have lots to celebrate. We figured we'd do a little season in review, talk about how our high stakes teams finished up with Steph, who led the charge for us all year. We're going to have Sean from Go Bills Go, who took down the puppy, coming on in a bit, as well as one of our friends who took down the big NFC best ball contest that we drafted many teams in. And I've been told behind the scenes, might even have to shout out a DeMarcus Robinson tout from this show. So we're going to do all of that tonight on Ship Chasing. Let's get to it.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar Alpha Play Chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally this boys. You're right.
All right, we got the crew here, the normal Shipcast crew. It felt weird, guys, to have a Thursday afternoon where we weren't frantically trying to get our pick'em entries in.
It's nice, yeah. It's nice. Nice that there's not there's a night game this week. Nice that there's not a walkthrough for me to write on this particular Thursday. So I've enjoyed this Thursday, yeah.
Gretch, how are you doing? We got to hear a little recap of your big trip. Go Huskies.
Yeah, I guess a lot of this week felt different for me, obviously. So my Thursday wasn't so different than the whole week. Sunday, I'm usually right here watching all the games on my computers, and I was instead in a sports book in New Orleans. Got to watch that Husky game on Monday night. That was pretty intense. But yeah, it's been a wild week for me, for sure. If the last Shipcast a week ago, it feels like that was like 2 months ago.
It really, I want to hear more about the trip, but real quick, Steph, how you doing? Waivers, long gone. Does it feel good to be done with the season here?
It's one of those mixed feeling things. It's like, yes, it's nice to have a little bit of a break, but then it's like, you're kind of sad it's over.
Yeah, that's how I was. I was like, yeah, my Thursday was a little more chill. And then I'm like, but I didn't have any showdown lineups to build. I didn't have any pick'ems to build. So yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah, Gretch, like what was the highlights other than obviously your Huskies winning? Any notable moments, stuff you survived Bourbon Street thanks to Cooter Doodle's tips?
Yeah, we all survived. No big scary things happened or anything like that.
You didn't
any lettuce or any other substances, either fake or real. I flew into Atlanta and drove down with a buddy of mine. So it was one of the highlights was the drive down just with my buddy who, like, I got Steph. You'll be able to talk about this. I got to go to a Buc-ee's for the first time. They apparently opened in Texas.
Yeah. So I'm actually a horrible Texan. And Tyler made fun of me for this. I've never been to Buc-ee's.
Wow.
But I know that it's known for the bathrooms and beef jerky.
Yes, it's very. And then I bought my daughter a stuffed animal from there. They had like hundreds of stuffed animals in this place, of these little beavers, and it was insane. It was a whole spectacle. We got barbecue on like the side of the road in Alabama, the middle of Alabama, and then we found out like after already eating that this guy is his last day. He'd been cooking barbecue at this place since 1987, since the year I was born, and it was his last day.
That's a good sign.
It was incredible. Shout out, it was Mr. Goldsmith Gold Barbecue in Atmore, Alabama. That was fantastic. Bourbon Street, a lot of walking in New Orleans, man. Got a lot of steps in. There was a parade parade, right? Is that what you call it? With the floats and everything? Man, my brain doesn't even work yet.
That's what that's called.
Yeah, a procession? Yeah.
What do you call these? Ate some good food. Went to a fun Spotted Cat Music Club for New Year's.
I've been there.
Good music. Yeah, it was a blast. The whole trip was fun. Obviously the whole thing, the Huskies winning was kind of the whole thing. I'm excited though to hear about how our teams did, all that stuff. Sunday was wild. It was a whirlwind, and then with Monday right around the corner and the Huskies game and being in New Orleans, I didn't ever really get a full breakdown of where we finished and all this stuff. So I'm kind of excited with the audience.
Yeah. Why? I mean, we have so many things and sweats and stuff to cover. How about before we pull up Steph's piece, that kind of is a good way to do an overview of how our teams finished. Karain, why don't you tell us a little bit about your BBM sweat on Sunday? Because even though you weren't near the top of the leaderboard per se, like there was a moment there heading into that Seattle-Pittsburgh game where you were very live if certain things broke your way.
Yeah, so the Brees game on Thursday was nice, and then we had the game Saturday where I was telling Britt beforehand, like I kind of need there's like a few ways this can go. Like the Saturday game can blow up, and then I'm actually a little bit thin because like it's just gonna be like me holding hands with a bunch of teams that have this game really stacked up. But I need it. Or it could like totally dud, and then I'm completely relying on Geno Smith. So I'm not dead, but I'm feeling pretty dead. And then the other thing is that it can kind of like go off, but not fully. And that's probably my best case scenario, because as long as like the pieces I need, I get big scores out of a couple of the pieces, and then I can get different in other spots. And that's what happened. I had CD, and at the very end, I got the one thing I absolutely needed was a tight end score. So I got Laporta to get to like 12 points. I was like, I can live with that. And then heading into Sunday, it was still Geno Smith was my path, but he didn't need to have like this massive game. As the day went on, what I needed became more and more. But at one point I was like, I don't need like a huge game. But yeah, I mean, it really was like I needed Geno and at least one of his two receivers to have a really strong game. And as it was clear that wasn't happening, I was like, all right, I can't take it down. But it was still fun to have Jalen Warren hit the lineup, him and Brees being my most drafted players.
Yeah.
He almost had an even bigger game. Rudolph had him wide open for another touchdown. But yeah, I have to say, I mean, sweating like Pete Carroll, like hoping Pete Carroll will play aggressively and then watching him call a game like Pete Carroll it's a little soul crushing. But
dude, as someone who's rolled out like Geno double stacks 3 or 4 weeks this season, like trust me, like I don't know why I keep ramming my head against that wall, but it is a painful sweat trying to get Pete Carroll to pass.
It really is.
You're muted, Gretch.
Sean and I did the similar thing where we decided to. Well, we didn't really decide to. We lost Ramondre and then we lost Jalen Waddle, but we had Goff, Amon-Ra on Saturday. We had Brees and the Browns D on Thursday. We're talking about this on Thursday night. We rose all the way to third in the FFPC going into Sunday, but we'd already used 4 players. But having lost Jalen Waddle the week prior, Ramondre a few weeks earlier, we had to play a random flex, and we ended up landing on Kyle Pitts. We literally talked for the hour before lock about either Josh Downs or Quentin Johnson was actually a real conversation. We ended up going with Kyle Pitts. And anyway, the sweat you were just describing with Pete Carroll was very similar to mine with Kyle Pitts.
Arthur Smith and Pete Carroll. What a great place to be. Yeah. But I ended up finishing 36th, which is still very fun, to be in the mix and have the sweat. And then I ended up taking down the Big Dog 3. So Best Ball Mania 3 to the Big Dog 3 is a year later. But
did you
I also
have a
finished
sweat in that one, or did you kind of run away with it?
I kind of ran away with that. No one really had I had like 170 points or something, and I think the next highest might have been like 120, 130. Even with the Sunday night game, like they couldn't. I was just And then I was in the Bulldog 2, and that one I was looking really strong for second, and then the Jordan Love game, the final touchdown that he threw, bumped me down from second to third there. So that was my like real sweat, which didn't go great. And then I was like locked into third. Like I had a big league for third. So McCaffrey's injury there kind of hurt. But yeah, that was the best ball. I finished. It was like lucky in that the 3 tournaments I really cared about were the ones where I got good scores, and then I was in the Palm 2, didn't do much there, and I was in the Chow Chow, didn't do much there. So at least
I know there were a lot of people kind of sweating how you were doing in the Palm.
no one really checked in on that one yet.
You mentioned the Jordan Love game. I would say within the ship chasing world, our funnest sweat was the Buckeye Boomers Sunday sweat there with Jaden Reed absolutely surging down here. I know you have this one written up here, Steph. We ended up finishing in 7th place overall in prime time. And do you remember where we were heading into that game, Steph, on that team?
Well, we're back 86 spots, so don't make me do the math in my head. No.
Yeah. So in the 90s there, 93rd overall heading in, and then just a total surge in that game. And we were starting to get a little greedy too, because we're looking at how could we go up higher, and then Jaden Reed actually ends up leaving the game.
I know, a bummer.
I mean, we were only a few points. It was quite a big jump still to first, but there was only, a handful of points from, probably 4th through 7th there. Like it would have easily another couple catches. And, it's so top heavy that just moving up those couple spots could be a lot of money. But both the primetime teams started off back to back. So you kind of saw the tail of two teams, what can happen that final week. One went up and one went down.
I think it was fun too, right? Because this was the team where we had Devontae Adams, right? And, he had a, overall down year, a few spike weeks, but to get, I believe this had to have ended up being his best game of the year, right? His week 17 game.
So
it has to be.
I think he had another 40-point game somewhere in the mix, but it was way early in the season. It's been a while since he's done anything. And Bijan's still a little better, but not great,
Yeah, this team, like you look at who was in our starting lineup, and there were so many players that surged late. Breece Hall came on late. You got the one massive George Pickens game in week 16. I mean, Laporta was consistent throughout the year.
You do and you don't on this team.
ETN.
We didn't play Pickens.
We didn't play Pickens.
Oh, what is this screenshot from here, Steph?
No, we played him. We played him
final.
this past week, but not in week 16.
Yeah, I was like, you played him. Because you sat JSN. And then it was between deciding with Reed or Dobbs.
We played him week 17. We didn't play him week 16 when he went off.
Gotcha. Oh, and you were supposed to do it the other way, play him week 16.
I think he was good in both, right?
He's good in both. Yeah, you want him for week 16 though, for sure.
Would have been nice if we played him in the first one, because we would have jumped even further.
Yeah.
There were talks of people were thinking he was going to get benched and stuff. I mean, nobody was going to start him.
I did not. I mean, when I wrote him up in the walkthrough, I was like, they keep cannibalizing each other. It's annoying. Like I was not particularly optimistic, but
yeah. Awesome to see this team finish so strong here.
I missed this sweat entirely because we went out in Bourbon Street and everything. I remember I was checking in and it was halftime, and I was like, "How do you people on?" And I wasn't even in East Coast time; I was in Central time. How do you guys do this? Where like the game started at 7 p.m. out here on the West Coast? Like, I mean, it was like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. We were like out of the late dinner. There's games on.
That's just life, man. That's just how everyone lives.
That's not how it works.
Yes, it is how it works.
No,
it works for everyone but West Coasters.
It's confusing. It's so late.
It's a way of life here. Steph, talk about our waiver chasing team. We end up finishing in a 155th here. A good season, but couldn't really surge during that playoff stretch.
No, like I said, we kind of had the opposite trajectory where we actually went way up last week and we're sitting in a good spot because we started lower and then we were ahead of the other team and then we fell. So, I was really optimistic. Okay, wanting to think that Kelsey, like this was the best spot if there was ever like a spot, playing Cincinnati against the tight ends. They're one of the best teams and he did absolutely nothing. We already talked about the Geno sweat, how that went. So we sat Stafford and went with Geno. Wasn't that big a difference. It wouldn't have mattered. We had some disappointing running back other than Breece, Swift and Gibbs didn't do it for us. So
yeah, I mean, Kelsey was obviously a huge disappointment all year. I was particularly disappointed with kind of like the second half for DeAndre Swift. I mean, that kind of run out for him. It seemed like it was gonna. I always remember we did that shipcast. It was the Commanders game, and he was running so well on that Thursday night.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, it was the fresh legs in the Commanders defense that was making him look so good.
I mean, well, I don't know. The Eagles just haven't looked, especially the defense, but
Yeah.
and then they keep rolling out Gainwell too and stuff. So
Yep. Yeah. This
frustrating.
team had both the Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall pairing, which was a pairing we had on many teams. I would say our worst sweat was losing first place in our 2,500 with Leone. We end up losing by just a couple of points. We had a 1v1, essentially down a couple points to their Tucker Craft, our Ty Chandler. And there's just a million woulda, shoulda, couldas. Basically any, Christian McCaffrey touchdown in week 16, him not leaving the game early, us playing Kenneth Walker instead of Ty Chandler this week. Like, guys, there were so many ways we let $9,000 slip out of our hands.
And I kind of like, once we knew that Walker was going to be in, I kind of like re-asked, was like, but he was still then the dropped, on ETR, which, Leone works for. So you kind of, assumed that was his lean, is what his projections say. They docked him a little bit from where he was, with the injury situation. And, we thought that, with CMC and Purdy and, all these guys, that it wouldn't really be close. So it was like, play the safe, we thought play the safer guy, that there's not some sort of injury concern with, or, leaving early.
Yeah.
So it makes all the sense in the world just to,
I mean, I remember like
when
Warren was scoring points for my BBM team, I remember thinking like, well, this doesn't even really matter because Ty Chandler's going to outscore him. And I felt that way until he was like, above 15 points. And I was like, well, then maybe he doesn't get there. But like, I don't know. I felt very confident that Chandler was going to have a good game.
Yeah, I think we all did.
Yeah, so you look at this. This was a team, we had a pretty giant lead. And then you just look at these scores across week 17. I mean, Ayuk had a good game, but I mean, Gibbs in a shootout environment, 5.3 points. CMC leaves the game early. Devontae, 6 points. Drake London's Drake London. Laporta was fine, but Chandler, 9.4. Even our defense, this was the dark side of the big Brees Hall in the Jets game too, is our Browns kicker and defense. I guess the defense was fine at 14, but man, that one stings. It literally, guys, was like what, a 2.5 point swing. So first place in the 2,500 was 14K and second place was 5K. So like a pretty gross swing.
We did sweep the regular season payouts for another 5K. So I mean, it still was a very profitable league, but that 9K drop. The lesson from that roster, I think, I mean, we just didn't have enough receivers. This is a team where Leone really wanted to take Marquise Brown at one point, so we just had more receiver depth. And I know I was pushing for us to take another swing. I think we took Quentin Johnston, who didn't hit. I mean, not that Marquise Brown would necessarily, but I don't even think he played last week, right? But
no.
Drake London not really hitting. I mean, even though we were able to play three running backs most weeks and had Laporta, like our wide receiver 3 spot was an issue the whole year on this team.
Yeah,
it was.
But you guys still killed the competition. I mean, you were in the regular season, like you said, you got the sweep with regular points and first. I mean, so it still turned out strong. But I agree that because you have to start 3 wide receivers in this format.
Yep. Yeah, this will definitely go down just collectively as our best ship chasing portfolio year. Had a very profitable year across both FFPC and NFC. It just stings to have
it's nice to tilt about a team where you finish first in points, first in record, and then barely didn't win and got second. I mean, that's obviously very tilting, but it was a hell of a team.
Yes, and then also like after week 15, we were up by like 100 points. Like I didn't even think this was possible.
I
know.
Well, on week 16, you got within 3. They caught up because you had that really bad down week.
Yeah,
49ers and stuff.
49ers. Yeah.
So that's what did it, is the week, because then they were only like 3 points behind that second place team. So it was pretty much neck and neck this week, starting even grounds.
Yep. The Silver Bullet team, this we really enjoyed this contest on NFC. Obviously, a single entry tournament, but it is a very tight and top heavy contest where only the top 10 get paid. Additionally, there we finished 13th, so just outside of the money there. But this was a fun team, and like I thought we were gonna finally get there because we had the Lamar Jackson, Isaiah Likely stack there in week 17, but just not enough to push us in there.
Because you were in 7th place just also on this one the week before.
This is another one where week 16 was pretty devastating.
Or 15.
We were up there after 15, if I remember right. When James
Cook
had
15.
week 15. Cook has the tough. We had Cook on several good teams, and after week 15, they were looking a lot better than they were after week 17.
Yep. Yeah, James Cook has those ends up being back-to-back down games against the Chargers and the Pats. Really, really hurts. And then you basically just have to pray you have the right combo of running backs around him. But yeah, to not get to take advantage of the Lamar Jackson, Isaiah Likely, like if you show up to the underdog tournaments with those guys at the finals, like you're shipping, you know? So yeah, but really enjoyed that single entry. We then head down to our FFPC main events, our Chase and Go Bill squad, which was quarterback list for both week 15 and 16.
It was, and because it scored like 200 points.
Another James Cook
without a quarterback, and then you lost. Well, and Mostert.
Yep.
And that was the problem because then you lost Mostert.
And then we still didn't have a quarterback. Week
16 was a disaster.
You got a quarterback
in week 17,
players, and we had to start Chase Brown and Logan Thomas. As you know, I mean, those were not our, because this was a really strong team pretty much all season and really deep. So we were not like
it felt like it had a real chance to win the whole thing.
Put up 200 points without a quarterback.
Yeah,
this team was sick.
This team was sick.
It was one of the better teams.
Yeah. I mean, ended up again being another profitable team because we got the full sweep, I believe, right? For that one, first place in the regular season. So shout out Daryl, aka Alex Keaton. We had a blast drafting with him live in Vegas. And there's certainly ways that this team breaks a little differently, where it is just an absolute uber smash there. Really like how we constructed this one. The team that we had that collectively finished the highest in the main event was our mini Sods team. The first slow draft we did ends up finishing in 130th place. Another kind of James Cook, Jalen Warren team that didn't have Mostert, got the big CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk stuff, but just couldn't piece together all of our alpha wide receivers like going nuke at the right times.
And we were pulling the levers all over the place, doing the Geno DK stack here, and we also have Debo on this team. We benched him, just trying to increase our likelihood of climbing in that final week.
Yeah, did Metcalf end up outscoring Debo? It must have been close, right?
I'm not sure.
I know Debo had a little rushing touchdown, but didn't do much else.
I think Debo got under 20 still. I think he was like maybe 17.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
we benched him
it
2 weeks in a row. In the first week, it was did get us points.
He had 18.2, so he had a little more.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you guys think? I mean, AJ Brown was another guy, right? What did he have that string of 5 straight 125-yard games there at one point, and then just really fell off?
Yeah, he was pretty disappointing. Not as disappointing as Smith.
I just pulled up his game log. Didn't have a 20-point game after that stretch of the 125-yard games. Only had one more 100-yard game the rest of the year, and closed the season, the fantasy playoffs, 3 straight sub-15-point games.
And plus, Goddard was out. It was weird.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also tough. Like, this was a 0 RB squad that was absolutely loaded. This is a team that had Jordan Addison, Deontay Johnson, some other wide receivers you might consider, but it's like, it's probably similar to the Stephon Diggs thing too, right? Where it's like, you just feel like you can never bench them. Like you don't want to bench that profile. You know what they're capable of, but in a way they can end up being like kind of a roster clogger if they never return to their form.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, CD was also kind of in that mix where he got a little quieter and then he blew back up. So that's like kind of why you feel like you can't do it.
Yeah.
I think AJ Brown does have that nuclear ceiling that, CD just showed off. So
do you guys
Yeah,
have
but
any
it's tough.
thoughts? Because we've wrestled back and forth every year. We always do that first slow draft, kick it off around 4th of July when they open them up. Everyone always kind of debates, do you want to draft early? You want to backload them? I mean, this team seems like a pretty strong indication of some of the values we were able to get early that weren't available. Like James Cook was going, 4 or 5 rounds higher when main events wrapped versus where we got him?
We took him at 7-11. He was a 5th round pick by the end of main events.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this tournament probably rewards the early drafting super team element a little bit more than something like Best Ball Mania. Because like you can miss on more picks and getting because you have a waiver available to you, and having like unique combos that you show up to the sprint with is more powerful. So yeah, I mean, I really like this team's like very fun and definitely I think one that benefited from drafting early. So obviously, the team we just talked about with Daryl was one we drafted live in Vegas, so you can build really strong teams there too. But I do think it kind of gives you like this team not only was strong, but I mean we had so much depth that we were able to do some interesting lever pulling in the tournament itself, whereas our other teams were kind of more like, all right, this is the roster, and it's not really up for debate.
Dom adds an interesting note there in the chat that first place this year, second place last year, drafted after week 1. Before this year, my previous high team in ffpc was also drafted after TNF. I think there's pros to both, basically, right?
Yeah,
like,
me too.
Yeah. There are, and I also would say this year specifically had that reverse thing where it's very rare you're going to get players like Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp as mega discounted as they were in those mains right before the season started. That felt a little unique. Normally the values are moving in the other direction.
Brees also
Kelsey
fell.
too. And Kelsey.
Yeah.
I think
some
my
of the
take
best values were late this year.
I think my take would be that in the early window, like I think my take would be that you need to draft differently. You need to be very aware of when you're drafting and how you're drafting, right? And it's okay to just take, the singles or whatever. We called AJ Brown a triple when we were doing this draft, like some of the more the safer picks. One of the things when I'm looking at this draft, I'm reminded of when I pulled up the draft board and saw James Cook at 7-11 was that big debate we had about Jordan Addison or Evan Ingram at 802. We ended up taking Addison. He was great. I know there was a point this year where I was like, thank God Pat got us on Addison. It actually turned out that we didn't play him the last like 5 or 6 weeks. Didn't even consider it really because of how deep our other receivers were. We started this draft with 6 straight receivers. And I do think Ingram would have been, in hindsight, the pick because we never really found the tight end ceiling. We ended up taking Greg Dulcich the next round and didn't really ever have a legit tight end. And he's sort of this like – Ingram is sort of this example of a player that I do think earlier, James Cook, and we took Deontay Johnson in this draft, who wasn't great. But, I think you want to take bigger swings late, right? Like the Kyron Williams pick was more clear at the very end of draft season. People were getting more in on that type of like a huge swing late in the draft. And like a little bit of a safer, more careful, more value-oriented draft strategy if you're drafting in July. Like, does that seem fair?
Yeah, although I guess we can next year when we have the same argument, we can time out with your guy at the top of the queue. But I still think like the Addison pick to me, I mean, like it wasn't Johnston even or Flowers. Like I just felt like Addison gave us a value. Like he wasn't usually there. And he gave us a lot of upside late season at the wide receiver position that we ended up not needing at all. But I still feel like
unusual. Right? Because
Yeah.
normally the whole thing we say is like some of these guys are going to be busts. Some of them are going to get injured. It just so happened that our 4 horses, pretty much stayed healthy and within the top 20 wide receiver.
We did start with 6. We did start with 6 straight receivers, and I do think there's an element of drafting, like you're right, to some degree, even in season long.
Well, I'm saying that it wouldn't have felt like we had so much depth if what normally happens plays out, which is you get the injury or you get the bust. These guys didn't bust or get injured.
Right, but shouldn't you be drafting for the top 1% outcome is what I'm saying. We're like, if you start with 6 straight receivers, I felt at the time, and I think looking back on it, and again, I said at a period, I was glad that we took Addison. But I think, again, looking back on it now, that I think there's an element where you're drafting, when you take these 6 early receivers, you can't draft scared like, well, what if 3 of these guys bust? Like, then we're fucked.
Yeah, that's not really what I was feeling. I was kind of feeling more like AJ Brown is AJ Brown, but then, if he pulls a hammy and we start Addison late, and like you kind of have this monster team that like nothing can stop. And you're just like, doesn't matter because you have this rookie breakout. It gives you this late season upside hammer that kind of takes a team to another level. It was kind of my thinking. It's tough because Engram was a much better pick than I thought he would be. So you have that. It was like an evaluation miss there. And then we also like ended up with Laporta on a million of our teams, but not this one. So he
started going really early though. Laporta later in draft season.
Very late in this draft, I think.
He actually went 11:02 in this draft. He went
that's pretty early. Yeah. That's probably why I didn't get him,
Let's hit on a couple of these other ones real quick before Sean, I get all the Go Bills guys. They're all the same to me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm excited to have Sean on tonight. The 5 Horsemen, this was our other team in the FFPC sprint with our RotoViz brethren here. This one was starting to come on of late. It was another Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson team. Again, pretty strong finish in week 17. You get the Breece Hall stuff, you get Laporta, Rashee Rice really coming on, but just a little too late for this team and some kind of big duds in there at times. Bijan really kind of bringing some stuff down for sure.
Yeah.
And Garrett Wilson had a down week.
We were hoping to see a lot more out of Bijan in the playoff weeks and just didn't get it. And this team needed to make up a lot of ground.
Yeah.
I mean, it won its season, so it just then it kind of fell off in the first couple weeks of the playoffs and started pretty low.
Bijan's going to have like such a sick 4th year.
Whenever Arthur Smith is gone,
can you please just get fired?
4th year. Steph, tell us about your team with Wu-Tang Killer Bees. Chris G, you guys ultimately finished in 86th place. Really nice year there. Yeah.
So if we one more spot and we would have gotten the free entry to main event. So we went down $500 for the last game. But we had Lamar, who obviously had the huge game. Warren, who, everybody had. We had Amon-Ra. We were really stacked at receiver because we had a lot of injuries to our receivers late, but luckily we were really deep. So we still had some nice starts because, Nico, and then we had Keenan Allen. We didn't have for the playoffs. We got lucky that Njoku came on late. That was huge for us because tight end was a big weak spot. And then we ended up getting Mayer, and he didn't play either, so that was our only other tight end. We tried to leverage the kicker and defense a couple times. Luckily, I insisted on starting Houston defense, so I was like, no, we need to do it. But we sat Sanders both playoff weeks.
Oh geez,
so that hurt. And then we have Addison on this team also, which we missed the first week where he went off, and then we played him the week he got hurt.
Yep. This is a really nice team, though, seeing all these players and having like the hits. Like, I mean, Nico Collins, when he was healthy, was a total league winner. I mean, David Njoku, talk about like tight end premium league winner right there. I mean, just scorched the earth down the stretch. Some really nice picks there.
Silva and I had Njoku on a team that was an Andrews team. That team ended up finishing 13th with Silva.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Just
awesome.
like on the back of Njoku.
On the back of Njoku is another Amon-Ra team. Brees and ETN are the two that I made him take that he was really bad about. This is the one we got the huge fight about.
Yeah.
We also have Kyron Williams on this.
You got
team,
a huge fight and you finished 13th. That's so fucking sick.
That's great.
So good.
Oh, man.
Well, Steph, we're going to bring Sean on here in one sec, but again, just want to punctuate how thankful we are for all the work you put in this year. It was awesome that we were able to have a successful year with the team that we collectively drafted. It doesn't always work out like that. And it's definitely a testament to all the work you put in, like all those little edges. Each week, it just seems like one little edge, but you stack them up and then you look across the portfolio and you can really see how it played out in a really nice way. So thank you again for all of your hard work.
No problem. It was great working with you guys, and I had a blast doing it. And I look forward to working with everybody, and working with Pat here, and we got good things coming this year. So
We do.
Yeah. We're going to run it back next year. We're going to take down some of these top tournaments. Each year we keep leveling up. 2024, that's the year we take it down, right, Steph?
I think so. I can feel it. It's going to be our year.
If for some reason you guys are watching this and not subscribed to the fabulous newsletter, I'm going to drop a link to the most recent post we were just looking at. Holy cow, that's a wild link there. I'll get a better link there, getting all kinds
Longer
of
than the
tracking
newsletter.
cookies.
Wow.
Let's try that. Make sure you guys subscribed. And Steph, you said you're going to do maybe a little bit of other writing throughout the off season.
Yeah, maybe every couple of weeks. We'll see. It might be still every week. Just depends on how busy I am every time. But I'll try to, just kind of whatever I'm thinking about that relates, football, life a little bit here and there.
We'll
see.
Well,
I don't always plan it out ahead of time.
That's all right. You just gotta be inspired. That's how it works.
Exactly.
All right, Steph, we are going to bring Sean on now, but thank you again. It's been a blast getting to check in with you throughout the year on the Shipcast.
You're the best.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
Steph.
guys.
Bye, Steph. All right. And now coming to the stage, the formerly most unheralded member of the Go Bills crew. It is Sean Stutzman. I mean, I was Googling your name. I was trying to find stuff for the thumbnail, and I saw that your other two partners did an actual interview on local Bills TV, and you weren't there.
I was sick. Yeah, I was under the weather, and the guys were able to make it on. I was at home. I believe I might have had COVID. It was when I got COVID that year, I believe. So yeah, they were on channel 4 news in Buffalo. And I'm sitting at home watching them live, just talking about all the stuff we're doing. I'm just like, oh. Hey, you know what? I'm not complaining. Not complaining at all. Obviously, we've had a pretty good run so far.
Does this make up for that, or is it fall a little short?
A little bit. You know what? We're shipping the puppy on my own dime. Feels all right.
That's nice.
It's not the worst.
Yeah, that's
not
nice.
the worst.
Yeah. See, we're trying to do the Go Bills Go thing in reverse. So it's like you guys collectively win the million, and then you win the puppy. Pat won Best Ball Mania, and now we're collectively trying to win one of those big tournaments.
It makes sense. Just do it in reverse. You gotta repeat though. That's the tough part. Is you got to go back to back, and that's not not something that's done every day.
I know. I blew it there. Maybe you can.
So
you win the puppy back to back. That would be pretty sick.
I can't believe I won once. Yeah.
Pete, I was hoping you and I would just ship the BBM on our team that almost got into the final. I mean, we didn't need Pat to be riding along with us. He's already a freaking million.
I already had the tweets written in my head. Gratch, I was like, all caps, BBM goes through ship chasing.
I love it.
And it was right after that CMC did score a touchdown and the team did advance. So funny how that works.
Brutal. How many times did that happen this year? CMC didn't score the touchdown. I mean,
I know.
Week 16
just when we all needed him to. Yeah. So what is it like? Obviously, you've been playing FFPC for a while. At what point did you start getting into the underdog streets? Like, what is the backstory to you ultimately winning the puppy here?
Yeah, so I dabbled very lightly in 2021, maybe 20 teams across the whole thing. I discovered it then, the year we won the FFPC the first time. So I just played around with it a little bit. Last year, I did about 500-ish teams. I did like 100 or so in BBM. and enjoyed it. Didn't do that great. We the three of us actually had a bulldog team that made the final week, but finished last. I had a puppy team that made like 3K. But this year, after shipping the main event again, and I was just like, you know what, because I played poker a little bit as kind of a side thing. I was just doing fantasy football and poker, and I decided I'm going to take a step back from poker and try to aggressively play best ball fantasy football and see if I can make any runs, do anything crazy. So I ended up with about 1,000 drafts on Underdog, and then about 600 more across Drafters and DraftKings. Max registered a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I went pretty aggressively after it, and of 1,600 teams, I put 6 in week 17. So it's like you can do that much work and get only 6 teams in week 17. But I happened to have one of the exact right ones that you needed to make the money. So it worked out pretty good. But it was a long grinding summer. I mean, you guys talk about slow draft hell. I was probably in 400 slow drafts at one time during the summer at different times.
I think I got the 250 at most, and
it's a lot.
That was way too many.
So what did you do? Did you just draft them as they came up, or how did you approach it? Because I'll tell you what I did after you. I'm curious what you did, Pat.
Yeah,
you did that.
I did.
He selected Breece Hall and went to the next one.
I like that.
Yeah, basically. But I'm trying to even remember. I did not have like set times that I would check them. I would sort of just constantly be checking them and just blast in. I would just sort of blast the picks in. And I would,
as many as you can. Yeah.
The thing I did, the only way it was doable for me is that in the early rounds, I would force myself to like star the teams, star the team of the guy that I had selected and the team that had week 17 correlation. So that like I at least had like that like just helping me understand like the build that I was making and what I was like looking to do. And by the time you get to like round 9, 10, like that was the only way that I kind of had any sense of what I was trying to build.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes sense. I was so because this is all I was doing. I would set alarms on my phone every 6 hours, and every 6 hours I would just get on the computer. And that's the other thing I would say: if you're ever doing volume fantasy football, and if you draft and if you make any picks off of your phone, you're destroying your EV. Every pick you draft on your phone, you're killing EV. So that's if you're drafting any kind of volume.
I actually think I kind of agree with you, but expand on it.
Well, you have access to everything. There's so much more information on your computer, right? If I have any data I have, it's not going to be on my phone. Anything I'm looking at, sure, I know who everybody. You have every week 17 matchup memorized.
Those
by
don't
June,
matter though.
Like,
you don't need to memorize.
No, obviously not. Those aren't really relevant. But if you use a tool like Spike Week, it gives you all that so much useful information while you're drafting. You can't use that on your phone. You don't have access to the kind of data that makes it a little easier to understand the way your whole portfolio looks at one team and how you're spreading out certain things. If you're trying to not be too aggressive on certain players, you don't want to. I don't personally think you should go off the deep end like Liam used to, espouse maybe going crazy on certain guys. That's never been my thought process.
Where are you kind of setting the line for exposures and stuff?
Try to keep it under 25% if you can. My most owned player across everything was Brock Purdy at about 25%. And I think that's probably where you want to be, just because otherwise you're putting yourself at such higher risk for not that much more reward, right? How much more reward is it to get those extra 15 shares of a guy when the risk that you're taking by adding 15 more potential dead teams if that guy isn't who you need him to be? It's very risky. So, as you get to later rounds, you can be more aggressive, obviously, but anything relatively early, you got to be pretty cautious with, I think.
So you said you had drafted all of these teams. You only get a handful to the finals. Was there a moment during week 16, maybe at the start or whatever, where you're like, shit, like I could just take a total bath this year?
Not really. Week 16, because in week 16 I still had 40 teams left, so it felt okay. even though
Yeah.
you know that the odds of advancing a good percentage of those teams to week 17 is slim, you're still feeling all right because you still got 40 rosters. It's hard to sweat 40 individual rosters, right? So like,
Yeah.
you can't really go. I wasn't really going through looking at every single team. I would look at some, see the ones that scored a lot week 15. I was like, okay, what's interesting about these teams? But you can't really sweat it. So you just got to for me, I was just like, well, let's see what happens. And hopefully I advance. I was hoping to advance like 8 to 10. And so 6 was a little disappointing. But I looked at those teams and there were a couple. This team that won was interesting. I had another one that had Fields and DJ Moore that I thought was interesting also going into the week that felt like it might be a little unique, so to speak. So, but this obviously, this one ended up hitting all the right buttons.
Yeah, I just pulled it up here on screen. First of all, what's the backstory on the username Peter Wiggin?
Yeah, so Peter Wiggin is a minor character in the first book of a series by a guy named Orson Scott Card. You've heard of the book. It's called Ender's Game, probably, if you know sci-fi at all. So Peter Wiggin is the main character, Ender, his older brother. And he takes a more major role in a sequel series that the author wrote that's really interesting. So I like the character. I identified with the character a little bit. Yeah, nice.
This is how you get into Wiggin here.
Ender, if this guy's Ender on Underdog, he's definitely in a bunch of my my Underdog drafts. There's an Ender in there that I saw pretty regularly, which I enjoyed. But I enjoy the character. I think he's a very interesting character. Ends up ruling the world, actually. So take that.
So
take that
it is a great book. This is this is a super fun team. Just to service the audio listeners, I'll read it off here. Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, at running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Conner, Devon Achane, Jerick McKinnon, Tank Bigsby, Chuba Hubbard, wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, ARSB, Godwin, Ayuk, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Wandale, and then the tight end room, which is the funnest one, like Tyler Conklin, Isaiah Likely, Cade Otton. This is a team where it's like Cade Otton's one spike week, like drug you into the playoffs, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I need it. I definitely would never have made it. I wouldn't have advanced this team without Cade Otton. No chance. Wow. Cade Otton was massively important for this team. He was good. He was when I was doing pre-draft, especially last year, but even going into post-draft, I was doing a lot of last 3 rounds, 3 tight end, punt tight end builds. And Cade Otton was a pretty popular guy for me in that last round of those spots, just because he's going to be the starting tight end in Tampa and there's no one to take his job. And if that offense is anywhere near what I was hoping it was going to look like, he was going to be an interesting player. And it turned out all right. It turned out signing the quarterback coach who turned Geno Smith into a Pro Bowler was a pretty good move for Tampa.
Yeah. Casey says, let's see the draft board. I was just doing some math on this. I would say the crazy pick, Ayuk falls to the 5-6 turn, right? That's the crazy guy?
Ayuk at 6'2" was the kind of mild surprise there. Ayuk was a guy that, and Nick and Dom can, Nick especially, but that was a guy we loved, especially. I was Ayuk this year. Really big. He was one of my most owned players. Really, really heavy on him. So to get him at 6'2" was pretty ridiculous, and I still can't believe I didn't take him at 5'11", to be honest. But yeah, I took Godwin ahead of him, which is strange for me looking back on it. But yeah, Ayuk at 6'2" was a huge hit for me on this team, no question.
Yep.
I actually took Achane, I think, in the 9th or 10th, which feels early, but there must have been something going on during this window that he had risen ahead of Mostert significantly. Because it would have been just after the draft, I think, that this would have come out.
And you said it was a coincidence that you had Lamar, Likely, Zay, Achane bring back, Goff, Gibbs, ARSB, CeeDee Lamb bring back. That was just a coincidence?
Total coincidence. Yeah, it was just random luck that I ended up with 2 full Week 17 stacks with a bring back on the team. Never would have thought to build a team in that way, or thought it might give some ceiling.
It's pretty fortunate that all 3 of those Baltimore players and the Miami bring back all hit the lineup, and then also you get Lamb and Amon-Ra. Like the way that worked out was real lucky.
Yeah, real lucky. You could never have predicted that those 2 games would have been really interesting in Week 17. Especially, you know what? Especially if you watched the Miami-Baltimore game from Week 1 the previous year. where there was like 80 total points. Never would have thought that Miami-Baltimore would have been a fun game to maybe bet on for Week 17 this year.
Oh man, I love it. So what did you run away with this one? I wasn't in the. I didn't see a leaderboard or whatnot. Like, what was the sweat like for this?
It was a sweat kind of. So I was done at 4 o'clock basically. The only guy I had left was Reishi, and he didn't crack. No, maybe it wasn't. I think I was done totally at 4 o'clock. So I was sweating. I was anti-sweating Lockett, and then I was anti-sweating all the running backs in the late game. Dylan, Jones, and Chandler were all anti-sweats for me. But they were, the teams behind me were down by about 19, and the guys needed to clear like 10 to even hit their lineup. So it would have taken some pretty big scores in that game. Not unreasonable. 30 points. We've seen Aaron Jones on Monday Night Football have 5 touchdowns before. So anything, you know, it's not out of the realm of possibility that a game like that happens. But yeah, they needed some pretty big scores in those games to have a chance to go back.
Given the lead that you had, do you regret rooting against Chandler quite so hard since it cost us $9K?
Yeah, I definitely regret it completely. I wish he had scored more. I wish he had gotten to like 20-ish, and that would have probably gotten you guys there, and I would have been just fine.
Nice.
So
I figured that had to be your fault.
Yeah, well, you know how it is. I can't, you know, I can't control where I direct how my luck takes.
I mean, I know you guys have some type of voodoo shit with what you root for.
Yeah, there's something going on.
All this shit.
I won't talk about it selling our souls or anything. We didn't know that ever happened.
Yeah, are you worried that you used up all your Go Bills run good on this team and they're going to lose to Miami on Sunday?
We used all of our Go Bills run good 2.5, 3 years ago.
2.5 years ago.
So I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening anymore. So no, we didn't win the main event this year. So because we didn't win the main event, the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl this year. It's coming.
Okay.
All right. That's just how it's going to be. I mean, they're for the record, their defense is coming together at the right time, and them getting Daquan Jones back should be the scariest thing for opposing offenses, because with him and Oliver next to each other, they're going to be so disruptive. I pray for Tua Tagovailoa this week. That's all I got to say. Good luck to him. We'll see what happens, but we'll see.
Calling it there. Well, you guys, I feel like you guys show so much restraint because you still only fire a handful of bullets at the main event?
Yeah, we fired 8 at the main event this year. And then Nick and I each did our own like solo efforts. But yeah, we don't not that we don't feel like we could handle a larger portfolio of main events, but we don't think we would enjoy, I don't think, firing those kind of events so aggressively. We think we found a pretty good foothold where we are in terms of how we work together and how we're efficiently able to handle this many teams, and we do a pretty good job with it. Not this year, but most of the time. So I think we found our niche a little bit, and we might be a little more aggressively attacking best ball as a team next year. We'll say that might be something that we look at. I think seems to be something that might be in the cards. But in terms of managed stuff, I think we're pretty comfortable building the portfolio the way we do, and managing the amount of teams that we manage. I think makes a lot of sense for us.
Yeah, and I mean, you also just have to be at peace, like when you're doing that few of teams. I mean, even us who ended up having, I don't know, double-digit, high stakes teams. It's like your draft slot is still largely going to determine like your early round exposures. Like, yeah, you can be overweight on a 7th round pick, but it's like your access to the top 24 guys is still wildly dependent on that slot.
Yeah, and that was the thing that we pretty strongly felt hurt us a lot this year, is that we had a lot of 1 through 8. 1 through 9. We didn't have any real 10, 11, 12. So we had one share of CD Lamb. And that's a guy that we love. Like CD is one of those guys that you just, he was on the team that won the, last year. And we just, obviously he was huge to have this year, but it just felt, it felt bad that a lot of the guys that hit and a lot of the teams that felt very strong were in the late portion of the draft this year. And we just didn't have, because like you say, when you do 8 to 10 teams, when your draft slot dictates what happens, and if you're picking in those early spots, you had to dodge so many landmines, and you just kind of couldn't in a lot of ways, because you were just going to end up hitting one of them at some point, and it just would would kill a lot of those teams.
Yeah, and like rounds 2 and 3 were sort of set up as a lot of landmines as well from that front half of the board. So it was like it was just tough. I mean, you get McCaffrey, but even with McCaffrey, it was tough to pair him.
Yeah, you would have McCaffrey, but then you would take T. Higgins in the second round, and that just wasn't good. And then now you have Higgins. Now you're looking at maybe getting Burrow, and that was terrible. So it was just so many things that could spiral a team that felt great out of control. Like we had a Justin Jefferson team in the league with you guys, and that team had quarterback death after we had Richardson, and the team just went off a cliff once we lost Richardson, really, and you lose Jefferson, and it's just over.
Yeah.
So those kind of things happen, and that's the fun and the hardest part of these managed teams is that no matter what you do, it's so hard to be Chad Schroeder, Dave Hubbard, those guys who fire 100 of these things. Like that to me seems just untenable for any, like, unless you're hiring a staff, which who knows how they could do things, but unless you're hiring a staff to do a lot of the work for you, it just seems completely unrealistic.
Did you guys see Chad Schroeder's tweet the other day?
Oh, his in and out, he's crazy.
His hourly.
First off, let me just say that hourly, it's ridiculous because that's what $50,000 in profit. You're telling me that someone who makes $50,000 a year is making 20 cents an hour? That's nonsense. That's nonsense. So I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, plus it's only, how many? Because it's only for a part of the year. It's not like he's.
I'll read the tweet here for the audio listeners. Chad says, I was in for $752,093, out for $809,491. What an epic waste of time and physical and mental health, about 20 cents an hour. When I first read the tweet, I misread it as 75,000 and 80,000, and then I circled back and noticed
the same thing.
Yeah, he's insane. I mean, what he does is, God bless him, because I would, if I had the ability to do that, for sure, it's incredible. But yeah, he made 60 grand this year. Anyone who makes 60 grand will tell you you're not making 20 cents an hour making 60 grand in a year. You're doing all right, probably. So I don't know, but
yeah, no, I see both sides of it. Other people are like, oh man, I would kill to make 60,000 playing fantasy, but it's also, you can do a lot more with $750,000 in a million other markets than tying it up in fantasy football.
I think I just did the math. Unless I did this completely wrong, it would come to about 220 hours a week for all 52 weeks to get.
Hey, you gotta have a little hyperbole to drive.
Divide it by 8 months. It's not right.
Yeah.
Like
it's more hours than there are in a week. So
I'm going to be saying May 1st.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's questioning that Chad puts a lot of time in, and that only clearing 60,000 on that volume is a massive disappointment for him.
I get it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah. Any other kind of macro takeaways, Sean? You had do you think? People always talk about the competition is tougher on Underdog. I've always found some of those puppy rooms to be extremely tough because you have a lot of the grinders who know what they're doing, who just want to get in big volume there. How do you think, you said you guys might be scaling up your best ball portfolio. How do you think about contest selection and where you guys are going to be firing?
Contest selection's huge. I think that, I'll tell you this, the puppy room I was in, I looked back on the draft board at some point, and there were, I want to say, including me, there were 7 red badges and then 2 black badges in that room.
Wow.
So like you say, there's going to be highly experienced people. This game is becoming so popular, and it's becoming so much more mainstream, but there's grinders everywhere. I do think contest selection is huge. And if you are firing, I think if you have the wherewithal and the bankroll and you're able to fire some of the higher stakes, mid to higher stakes stuff, the small field stuff, that is a place where I think you can, be kind of somewhat aggressive and find some interesting spots. But I do think Underdog is the toughest in terms of opposing player and just consistently finding drafts that are making solid decisions throughout, that there's not really a weak spot in the draft. Whereas on places like Drafters and DraftKings, I noticed you would come across rooms, felt more often, where you're looking at some of these picks and these teams and you're like, oh, you're just clicking buttons. There's just no rhyme or reason to any decision that's being made. And it feels like it happens a little more often on those sites, but there's give and take there. Slow drafts on DraftKings are hell because there's no overnight pause. So if you try to draft,
I couldn't do it.
I did it, but I had to set an alarm. I had to literally make every pick until 11 p.m. And then I had to set an alarm for 6 a.m. every day and make sure I got up at 6 a.m. and made every pick on DraftKings first because I would be almost out of time. So it was that was the toughest thing about it. I mean, I get it.
I don't want to do this.
Yeah, but I do think it's worth it on a site like DraftKings where the lobbies are definitely a little more interesting and tend to take a little more unique routes. I'll say so. Yeah, I definitely like drafting there. I hope they switch that. I hope they make their just give me a 2-hour overnight pause and I'll be ecstatic.
With DraftKings, I kind of feel like there's something, I don't know exactly like how to articulate it, but it's like there's something to that, like in a given week, especially in the single elimination weeks, like it was like that much more important to have Amari Cooper, for example, because he scores just that extra amount.
Yeah.
And I think there is something on Underdog that I really like where like you can kind of get there in a more like a variety of ways. And I think that does reward team building. So like, yes, DraftKings, the rooms there's more dead teams for sure. But there's also this element of like, I think the way teams advance, it feels like a little bit more like luck is rewarded or sort of just like player selection is rewarded. Whereas at Underdog, team construction is rewarded a little more, I think.
It is for sure. Because the ceilings are so high on DraftKings with full PPR and yardage bonuses for all these guys, the ceilings are so high. So the spike weeks are so much bigger. Like the Cooper week was just so much more important on DraftKings. And if you didn't have it, you almost weren't advancing because it was so important to have that in those spots. So yeah, I mean, I had a team on DraftKings. My the last team in week 16, my last Millie team had 182 points and did not advance. And it just feels wrong for a team to score 182 points and be like, oh, no, this team's in fourth, by the way. Like, I'm just like, all right, whatever. I'm done with that. But yeah, you had to have those spike weeks. And I think you're right when you say you can build more of these correlated builds on Underdog and be rewarded than you can at DraftKings. It's a little more, you kind of got to bink it on DraftKings. You do it and you want to have those correlations still, but you got to bink it a little more. You got to get a little more lucky, I think, to really get there. Which is definitely an interesting element to it that I think you have to account for when you're in the draft room, which is why all three of these this site and drafters are so different from each other in the way you have to approach drafting. That was the biggest, honestly, if I had one takeaway from the way I drafted this year, it's that all three of those sites are so incredibly different in terms of how you should probably approach strategy that you really have to, that's the hardest thing is like trying to draft all your Underdog teams and then shifting your focus to DraftKings, then shifting your focus to drafters and trying to make sure that you're doing the right things for each of those builds. It's tough, like drafters, you don't want a Jamar Chase so much maybe in a situation like that. You want more of a, you want the safer quote unquote pick than the guys with boom bust option.
Mm-hmm. That was going to kind of what you're saying was going to be my next question, because I think a lot of people's takeaway, whether wrong or right after this year and observing who won, is they're just going to say volume, volume, volume. If I just do what I did last year, but I scale up my volume, then I too will get more teams to the finals and bink one of these tournaments. Obviously there's a lot more to it. And like one of the things I think really needs to be explored and studied more is like legit portfolio maintenance. So do you have like any advice for people, other takeaways that like, what are the things you need to do in addition to just upping your volume? Like, how do you do that in a smart way?
Reassess everything after the year. Try to do your best to reassess what you like, trying to understand the dynamics of what the league is doing different now. Is the league trending in a different direction? Are you assessing the way these tournaments are structured, because all of these sites change their structures every year. And Underdog comes out with 6 different structures. If you're not paying attention to all of that stuff as much as you can in advance, in how you prepare, how you're drafting a team and looking at the advance rates and things of that nature, I think you're doing yourself a pretty big disservice. Like, you can't approach Best Ball Mania the same way you approach the puppy, the same way you approach, the higher stakes stuff. You have to attack each of these tournaments in different ways based on how they advance and how they're built and how things move forward. So I think it's really important to just kind of pay attention to the macro and the big picture of everything, and then drill down on each tournament you play, each draft you take. You have to look at that. Okay, this competition works this way. What does this mean for how I'm going to attack this draft and how I'm going to attack this room? And then use your overall strategy that you have for this year, whatever player takes you may have, however you think the market's inefficient, and go from there and build your teams. But it's tough.
Do you have any kind of specific lessons learned for like along those lines of tournament selection, or just like playing on the different sites, like DraftKings versus Drafters versus Underdog, or just high stakes versus low stakes? Because I agree with you. I think a lot of that, like, I really kind of want to go back and look at my DraftKings play, because I think my Underdog play is like way stronger than my DraftKings play. But I don't know what, like, I need to try to figure out how to make the DraftKings play stronger. I don't have like a lot of great ideas right now.
Yeah, I actually agree with. I feel the same way about mine as well. I think my Underdog play is the strongest for me, and then DraftKings and Drafters. I lost money on Drafters. I understood how it worked, but I didn't strategize that well, I don't think, for it. And I didn't build the teams the way I think I should have. So I do think that those are things that I'm going to be looking at in this short period of 3 weeks we have before we start drafting again. But those are the things that I'm going to be looking at to try to figure out, hey, what did I do on DraftKings to only advance 2 total teams to week 16 and only 1 team from the Millie to week 16? Did I make major strategy mistakes in terms of how the tournament is structured, how the tournament is scored? Did I make like errors there? Like I did on Drafters for sure. I was so aggressive on Jamar Chase. And to me, I think in a season long situation like that, I think it was a mistake to be super aggressive on Chase the way that I was over a McCaffrey. I think that was a pretty clear cut error in terms of what I was looking for. And but those are the little things that I think I look at is like, okay, well, how did the most successful teams do? What were their builds like? Like, look at the teams that won, especially on the site like Drafters, where it is just 1 to 17 who had the best team. You can really dive into what won and why, and like what was how can you, like, what kind of build made the most sense, and how these builds are put together. It was a little more enlightening in terms of how I think I'm going to approach that particular site next year, in terms of how I'm going to attack different spots and, be a little, less aggressive on stacking probably on that site, and maybe a little more trying to attack, market inefficiencies and closing line value. I think makes a little more sense at a place like that. Oop.
Interesting.
Yep. Well, Sean, Sean just dropped off here. You back here, Sean? We're going to say goodbye to you here in a sec to bring on our next guest, but can you hear us?
I can hear you, but my camera has appeared to have gone complete.
Well, real quick, as you figure this out, Inder did have a super chat here. He says, "Hey, Sean, congrats on separating the Go Bills conglomerate. I heard that Dom's bachelor party is coming up soon, and I was just wondering, had you thought about doing something really nice for him?"
Oh, gee, I wonder if this is an alt account of someone I know. Weird that this would ever come up. It is coming up, and I'm sure there will be some very nice things happening at said event. It's gonna be a great.
I was just wondering how many people know that's coming up and would be interested in Dom getting.
That is a valid point. I'm sure there's only a few. In fact, I'm quite certain there's only a few. So it's a pretty limited number.
Sean gave up all of his tips for portfolio management, then had to go in witness protection. He had to.
I'm apparently I've been lost. I don't know what happened to my webcam, but we're gone here. Oh, hello.
there you are.
There we go.
Whatever.
Sean, anything else? Like when, all these other content guys, they win, you're going to be launching, Legendary Bills Upside, tushpush.com. I mean, what's coming here?
I don't think content creation is probably in the future anytime soon. I like playing the game too much. I really enjoy the game. It may sound crazy, but I'm excited. It's true, but I'm excited to start setting my alarms for 10 a.m., 4 p.m., 10 p.m., and making a bunch of draft picks throughout the rest of the summer. I'm pretty amped to take another swing at this thing. So
Nice.
Awesome, dude. Well, follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_. How do you pronounce it? Is it Stutzman? Stutzman. Appreciate you guys. Hopefully we can bump into you again in Vegas this year at another event. We got to get like all of us together. Leone was gone this year, the year before.
Yeah,
some of us weren't there, so we got to get us all together.
we should. We do it. We try to do a nice dinner right before. Mike Shope kind of helps put it together. We'll have to we'll extend the invite. We'll get everybody together this year and get a big group and all go out to dinner.
Nice.
Maybe the day before,
Awesome.
Maybe Wednesday night.
Love it.
All right, Sean,
great.
thanks for hopping on. Congrats on taking down the puppy. It was great chopping it up with you, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good seeing you.
All right.
Thanks,
peace.
Sean.
All right. We got our final guest this evening, Mike Fay, aka DFS Analytics, aka the champ of the NFC Football Guys Best Ball Championship. Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be on here. Love the show and been a big fan, even though been a lurker for years, not a part of the community, I guess you would say. But love the show and yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you
congrats,
won.
man.
You won the $30,000 grand prize. These were the monstrosity of best ball drafts that we were drafting back in the early parts of the summer, right?
Yeah, and so the one of the reasons why I actually replied to that tweet from NFC sends them out and did that is because this show was the reason I even went over to NFC and did it because you guys, I think we're doing I would say I listen a good amount or watch, a little bit boomer podcast listener over here. And, and so saw that they had, I was doing a lot of Underdog, a lot of DraftKings, some FFPC, and went over there, previously did baseball drafts, things like that on NFC and had a chunk of money on there and said, I'll do a best ball draft every year, see what it's like. Really the second and third round wrap back around really interested me. And I happened to get the 12th pick on the first draft, which was the big winner.
Yeah.
Did you set your KDS there, or did you like us just kind of look into what they did?
I actually think I did, only because I was paying attention to the first draft. I don't know if I did
Nice, okay.
two or three, but but yeah, for the first one, I think I did, and maybe I can look it up on the league page, but I think it was the back end because the second and third allowed me to get went Amon-Ra, CD, and then Keenan.
Nice.
Which in this format is nuts too. To be able to get Keenan there in that format is so nice.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm just also cracking up. So I just pulled up Mike's team here on the screen, and you see the great starting lineup, Jordan Love, and then I just forget how many players we drafted.
It's so many. Yeah.
It's so many players. I'm like, you had Anthony Richardson on this team, Mike Williams. I mean, guys we haven't thought about in ages. But when you get to draft, 35 guys, it can work out.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I looked at the team, the team honestly literally went from 25th or 30th all the way up really quickly up until second, first for the last couple weeks, primarily due to Amon-Ra, CD. I had a lot of good late picks, but I didn't pay all that much attention to it till the last I would say 2 weeks, and it is it was crazy. Yeah, Mike Keenan Allen, Mike Williams unstacked was not, part of my plan on Underdog or DraftKings or anything like that.
Yeah.
Somehow worked here.
That's so it is interesting, like sweating like rotisserie style best ball contest. It's kind of hard.
Oh, it's so good or bad. I got 2 little kids at home. We have been sick since I don't know, right after Christmas. They got something called hand, foot, and mouth. So I was sweating it New Year's Eve on the couch, face down, paying attention to the TV. Luckily, it wasn't. It could have been a huge sweat if I didn't, for some reason, go Love Purdy back to back in the 12th and 13th. The guy in second had Love, which I think would have gotten me if I didn't have Love as well. And Love overtook Purdy, I think. And so it wasn't that big of a sweat. I think one guy had Love Reed stack that, but it was it's not close. It's not like moving back and forth like you're sweating some of the other lineups. So,
well, that's awesome, man. Is this your biggest fantasy football score?
Probably, yeah. So I've been playing for not best ball for that long, but been playing since back in the Star Street days and stuff like that. And the only reason why my Twitter handle that I don't know how many tweets I've sent out, but it's probably close to none. Was I was going to, back in Star Street days and things like that, was when it was a little bit easier game, I will say, was doing tons of DFS, was early on in my career, and made this Twitter handle, put an LLC with a buddy of mine. And that's why the only reason why I still use it is I follow everyone, within DFS and everything like that. And the plan was, he was big into coding, and R was a big thing back in the day, which just seems crazy now. And so still had this Twitter handle, and never, obviously the plan was to make, a notable score and try to maybe start something like you guys have been doing, but just didn't end up happening like that, but still used it. And this was the most, I'll say, like somewhat notable score in DFS. I actually think my biggest one, thinking about it, maybe golf, like way back in the day. Like I think I won, either came in first or second in a big golf tournament back in the day.
That's
nice.
Awesome. And so this team, I mean, some people were noticing in the chat when I had it on screen, you did get our boy Laviska Shenault, probably like the only team you will find him on that won someone, a 6-figure prize or 5-figure prize.
Well, won someone. I don't know if Laviska won him anything, but he was on the team.
Dude, he gets the ring. He's like Rojo there or whatever.
It's true,
yeah. Get the ring. But this team also has one Mr. DeMarcus Robinson. Did you say you were maybe influenced with this selection?
Maybe a little bit by Mr. Gretsch over there. Yeah, it was. It was back in August again. I can't attend all the live shows, but either podcast or YouTube them while working at night. And it was one of those things that I noticed, because one of the live shows I was watching was when he went off in that game, and definitely hit my lineup in what was that, week 16, something like that. So
yeah. Well, let's see here. Yeah, week 15 against let's see, where is he? Oh yeah, week 16 against New Orleans. 16, that was the game, 20.2 points. I mean, he's had a great stretch here.
He has,
through 17.
The thesis of the play, really.
The late season hammer.
I haven't looked at the entire board, but it may have been between him and Tutu Atwell, and wasn't in on Short King Summer there.
Short King Summer did kind of come to an end once the weather turned. Yeah, like we lost Tank. Tutu turned to dust.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a ton of fun picks. Obviously, you hit on Kyron in this draft. I mean, you had James Cook, even Ty Chandler. You had TJ Hawkinson carrying you at tight end for a long period there. I mean, you hit on a ton of these late picks.
Yeah, no, it was so it was my first draft on, obviously ADP skews everything. So when you're on here, guessing it was my first draft, it definitely was my first draft on here. So yeah, you see different values pop up and things like that. And, I had, luckily I was lucky enough to do well kind of across the board. I had a lot of, I would say, not great pod luck, but, was big on Kyron, really big on Ty Chandler, unfortunately really big on Keontae Ingram as well. But yeah, a lot of the picks are funny. And I think actually the funniest,
another
real
nice one there
came on there.
Yeah, I think the funniest one that probably my worst player take of the year was Mike Evans. I was just avoiding him like the plague. I was really, really big on Rashad White, but for whatever reason, did not like the QB there, and it just is highlighted that I took Kyle Trask. Was one of the
nice.
Yeah.
There was that period of the summer where Baker was throwing a ton of interceptions in practice, and it seemed like Trask wasn't
I think they were showing them back to back, just missing in gigantic targets.
I remember that.
Oh my God. Yeah, they looked horrible. And yeah, I was just like, it's gonna be short passes, short passes, run the ball. Maybe Kyle Trask comes in there and they just hammer him up the middle for a couple goal line touchdowns. But one of my biggest misses or stances in all of best ball / season long there.
It's the beautiful thing though about this game, and specifically with how best ball works, where it's it does just take that one team, and the way things work, where if you have that right roster come together, you can just have the worst, my most drafted guys were JSN and Quentin Johnston, and it didn't matter if you built good rosters when you didn't have those guys on the team.
Yeah. Especially when you have rosters this huge. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, when you have DeMarcus Robinson producing Quentin Johnson never will in his entire career, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Plus, Rashad White was a really good pick. So you got onto something good, even if you didn't nail every single player take.
Yeah, I had a lot of bad takes, but I think I had I would estimate 38% Anthony Richardson across DK and Underdog, which I think was a good take.
I think it was a pretty good take. Yeah.
And the other one was Evan Hall. I was thinking about that the other day, and I was
what could have been.
Yeah, exactly. I had a ton of him. Yeah, and I actually just checked it the other day. My wide receiver, I only on Underdog, I only did 55 on big tournament, but Jaden Reed, I had it 42%. So his week 17, I did not advance a single team, but the to the finals. So that big score was killing me.
Man. Yeah, it's crazy though, because when you take that archetype, even the Evan Holes, it's most of the time they're going to end up like Evan Hole. The point is when they turn into Kyron Williams, you ship a tournament, that's why you keep hunting for those guys.
Or even if they turn into Ty Chandler, getting a huge week 15 can be pretty meaningful, even in, whether it's total points or, especially the playoff week format.
Yeah. My take on him is, and I think it showed a little bit towards the end of the year that Zach Moss may have not been all that great. And I think Evan Hall could have just came in, when not only Zach Moss was out, but Jonathan Taylor was out and kind of taken over that for a bit. But yeah.
Well, awesome work, and it was fun seeing that. The truth is, we draft those best ball teams. I would keep tabs on them. I know Steph would log in, and if she saw something interesting there, our teams weren't in the hunt. So I'll be honest that I wasn't hawking the football guys best ball leaderboard there. So to see your tweet pop up and shout out ship chasing, that was a sight for sore eyes.
Yeah, no, I'm 99% sure I would have never entered it if I wasn't watching you guys. So really, really appreciate it. And yeah, it was sun running at the end, and yeah, it was a great time. I appreciate it. You guys actually. So I was overlay chasing. And ended up doing way more than I expected. I did 12 on ffpc, the football guys. Championship, or
the Fantasy Pros Now, or whatever it's called.
Fantasy Pros Championship, and I actually got 7 to the sprint. No, none of them did anything, and 1 4. So it was like even before that, got a lot. Was plus EV going into the sprint / underdog stuff. I think I placed 110th in the regular season on underdog.
That's a nice hit. Yeah. Well, awesome work. Yeah, don't be a stranger around here at DFS Analytics. Yeah, you slid. I was messaging you because I wanted to confirm that was you who had won that thing. And you're like, oh yeah, well maybe I could come on sometime. I was like, you want to come on in 5 hours?
Yeah,
you were down.
I mean, especially when you said 9:15. Bedtime. That's bedtime's over. It's all good. So no, I love the show. I definitely listen to not only this but all the other content that you guys do. It's really great. So appreciate it, and was definitely a large part of a successful year.
Well, just know, man, next year we're gonna remember to set our KDS, and we are gonna beat you in that best ball contest.
Yeah.
Probably neither of those statements are true.
Yeah, we won't remember, and we also won't be able to beat you. So.
Didn't you guys? I was actually paying attention to the beginning of the show. Didn't you guys place 7th in prime time? Isn't that
yes?
NFPC?
Yeah, we did.
Well, once we got to the prime times, our co-managers, dutifully reminded us
they set the KDS.
Yeah.
Then we argued with them about what they set. That's how we like.
Nice.
Right.
All right, Mike, I'm going to let you go. We're going to do wrap up with a little roundup I collected from the Discord here of some other wins. I wanted to shout some people out, but thank you again for swinging by.
Not a problem. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, we'll see you, Mike.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull this up here because we had I asked people in the Ship Chasing Discord to share some of their wins. Kind of shout out some people here. We have our guy Sacrilegious. I'm not sure which contest this was on DraftKings, $5,000 hit, finishing in 15th here. Our guy the Achievers, who just went on the RotoViz podcast. I heard Colin won't say the Achievers when he's on there.
Really?
He gets censored. Yeah.
What did he say?
Just the Achievers, I think. I will put some respect on your name. Third in the Chihuahua.
The Achievers now that he shipped?
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Ship the Achievers. 12.5K. He calls them the Achievers. The Irish are prudes. Obviously we already got Sean in here. Shout out to Chipsy, who was in that same puppy contest with Mr. Peter Wiggin, finished in 4th here for 20K. Good job, Chipsy. Man, we got to shout out this guy. I'm blanking on his actual name. Money Printer Go. I don't know if you guys saw this. He finished 1st in the consolation bracket for FFPC, and he would have won the main event.
The guy who won the main DM'd me, said he watches some Stealing Bananas or listens to some Stealing Bananas. So yeah, that was fun. Nice. But yeah, that's
about chip chasing or
our guy DFS Texas, who we did a main event draft with, got 5th in the Chihuahua 2. Congratulations, 2-4 offsuit, finished 10th in the puppy.
Nice.
And then JB Phil starting to kind of, my requirements for what you could post. Top 500 Best Ball Mania regular season. I guess we'll allow it, JB. Congratulations. Mac Nova, 3rd in the Chihuahua, but Superflex, and 7th in the FFPC Best Ball for 9K. Our guy Shorty got 93rd in the FFPC main event. Chung, our guy Chung here got 3rd, I believe, in the Best Ball tournament playoffs, the Best Ball contest on FFPC. So
awesome.
Shout out to the Ship Chasers for some nice scores there.
That's great. I had 2. So my team with Sean fell way off, but I had 2 top 30 FFPC main event teams, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I had my highest ever was 19th way back in 2020. I'd never had any other in the top 50. So 2, the top 30 was pretty cool. One was Silver, one was Sean.
Yeah, that is what
Sean
was the name of the Silver one?
Can we
talk
about that?
Sean talks about that all the time. Yeah, no, he loves your guys' team.
Our team is pretty filthy.
Yes. It was very fun to see all of the success everyone had. And I got a feeling 2024 is going to be even bigger and better as we all kind of divide and conquer these contests here. But it was a blast of a year. It felt good just to have a winning high stakes year for us. We took a bath there multiple years in a row. So it was fun to get on top this year.
Very.
Yeah, so we pretty much firmed up our programming schedule for next week. Gretch, first of all, you are heading, when is the national championship game? Monday night?
It's Monday, so now I'm flying to Houston Sunday morning, back Tuesday. Shout out Alaska Airlines giving us some direct flights down to Houston from Seattle at affordable rates. You got all these other airlines like price gouging for the flights, but Alaska Airlines is a sponsor of UW and listed some legit affordable stuff and like good itineraries, and was like, thank you. Like I hadn't bought my flight until they won. I had a ticket, but I hadn't bought my flight yet. I bought it the morning after their semifinal win because part of why I didn't buy it is people were buying all these refundable flights that prices were already going through the roof, and then there was rumors that they would add more flights. So Alaska Airlines came up clutch, gave us some more flights. I'm flying in Sunday, coming back Tuesday. I'll miss the first show of the week, but then we got stuff Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week. That'll be a blast. Yeah.
So those are all booked. So on Monday, we'll all sweat the national championship game. I've already tailed Gretch. The first time he told me to bet on Washington Huskies, it hit. Second time I said I was tailing you again, even though you weren't quite as forceful of like, you should make this bet. And I said, I don't care. That hit. Didn't even get your permission. Already bet the Huskies again for the national championship. We just keep rolling it on.
I mean, look,
how are you feeling?
I'm a little bit more nervous, honestly. So I told you about Texas. We know Steve Sarkisian, their head coach, really well. He coached at UW for several years. We also kept hearing, I didn't know Texas's team very intimately, but we kept hearing how they have a really good interior defensive line. You can't run on them, but their secondary was a problem. And anyone who watched that game knows all the deep passing that Washington wanted to do. Like every time they went downfield, it was money. Like that's what we do well. And so hearing that like you can't run on Texas, but their secondary is a problem. That's why I was telling you guys, I was like kind of excited to see like what UW can do downfield. Michigan has apparently the second best pass defense in the nation. So a little bit of a different challenge on defense. Definitely a little bit concerned about that. But I mean, we got really good receivers. Penix is a really accurate quarterback. We still have like a good scheme. We've got to be the best passing offense they've faced all year. I mean, it's going to be strength on strength. So it's just, yeah, I mean, I don't feel like it's as perfect of a matchup, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I'm definitely excited. They're in the fucking national championship. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. So everyone tune in, root on the Huskies on Monday. And then this is our programming schedule. So Tuesday, we'll have a show, the Boomer Opto Reveal with Hassan and Blair. I hope Hassan is in the lab right now. On Wednesday, the three of us here will be getting together. Pat will be revealing a first look at the ownership projections for the FFPC contest.
I've already done my first run.
First run, one
I don't
of
even
Pat
have the playoff team solidified. I've already done the first run.
Yeah. This is how you know he's still hungry out there.
Fucking love this contest. I like literally I need to draft so many playoff best ball teams, and I did a playoff best ball pod earlier in the week, and afterwards we were just like kind of just talking through like who might be chalk, and it got the wheels turning, and I was just like, I need to go in the lab and get this first run going because it's so fun, and I think this year's going to be really, really interesting with Lamar. I think kind of really driving things and at the ownership at the quarterback ownership in a way we don't typically see in this contest. We see chalk condensed in this contest in such a huge way, but not usually at quarterback in a huge way. And I think
because we're gonna go down, we're gonna get ahead of ourselves, but the Lamar CMC pairing just fits together so well.
Yes, yeah. Because imagine going into the Super Bowl with Purdy Flowers instead of Lamar CMC, and it's just going to be
leverage.
I don't want that. No, I want the Lamar one. I want the Lamar one when I go to the Super Bowl.
That when you're holding hands with all of your friends.
Well, true. But I think there's going to be a lot of Lamar CMC teams. So, yeah, it's really fun.
But so the question is, can you get there with like a Zay Deba or something? Like, what is there another quarterback that doesn't play in the Super Bowl?
I think Allen. I actually think the contest will be more interesting if Sean has his heart broken and the Bills don't make the playoffs. Which is obviously unlikely, but it could still happen. And if that's going to force people to Mahomes and Hurts, and I don't think people really want to go there. So you're just at that point. I think you would just see massive Lamar chalk. You're still going to see a lot of Lamar chalk, but I think Allen offers a fairly enticing secondary option because you'll get the extra game.
Yeah, and we see that every year. Like the sexiest 4-game quarterback always catches a decent amount.
Yeah. And you don't really want to play Diggs, right? James Cook's fine. So I think Allen will have plenty, but that then forces you to pick a Raven that's not Lamar. So I still think people will go to Lamar a lot more than Allen.
Yeah, it's not gonna. Yeah, wow. It's not gonna be Dak because Liam is just so dominant in that offense.
I talked to Jacob Sanderson earlier today. We were just talking, not as a part of the podcast, but he was just saying he was like, I don't see why Lamb won't be 90% owned. And I was like, I don't either. I mean, we have him at 88%. He suggested
we need Tony Pollard to run for 202 TDs this weekend. That's what we need for the Boomer Opto.
I really think there's going to be some huge chalk this year, just because it's if you get off of, there's certain teams that's I would like to get off this, but then what do I do? Who do I pick? Do I pick them just to lose? You're not picking CD pick Cooks. No, you have to just pick against the Cowboys.
Yeah. So we will be unpacking all of that on Wednesday. It flows into each other well. You get the Boomer Opto, then we get the full picture with the ownership on Wednesday with the three of us. On Thursday, we're going to have a bit of a stat chasing hybrid crossover. We'll be talking some FFPC playoff, but we're going to dive into everything. We're going to do some underdog playoff contests because we'll of course have Sacrilegious with us. And I think we might even do one of the NFC playoff ones. We haven't done a lot of content around that. I know Leone and Davis over the years have played in that a good bit. So we might try to tackle one of those as well. And then the Friday grand finale, of course, with Leone. We got to see with Dink with his NBA schedule if he can make it work. But we will have kind of our final drunken build show there with those guys. It's going to be a great week.
I honestly cannot wait.
Yep. So stay tuned for those shows next week. And then anything else for you guys between now and then, other than Gretsch getting some tea, resting up for a big weekend?
Legendary Upside. We got our dynamic rankings tool. I'll just shout that out one more time. I think it's pretty fun to draft with, and I'll be using it a bunch myself as I fire a bunch of these tournament teams on Underdog before turning my attention to the FFPC next week.
Yep. Gretsch, anything else for you?
Not a ton. No, I'm so focused on the Huskies. I'll definitely do a season kind of recap right up at some point, but it's going to be pushed back a little bit because I'm doing some traveling and more focused on some other stuff right now.
Yeah, I was planning to do a lot of underdog playoff drafts this week, and cash game week has been pretty consuming. So
are you able to get more on the site?
I got it. Yes. I've got it free. Yes. Woo. And I just accepted a $1,000 head-to-head from the BBM champ, Amin. So
Nice, dude.
Amazing.
I love it.
Hey, I mean, maybe just go partying this weekend. Maybe do some late DJ sets. Don't really worry about your cash shell.
Well, I should
fun.
mention I'm going to be talking with Amin tomorrow on the Legendary Upside podcast.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
in order, we get to interview him in order of who won first. So Liam took care of the first interview. I'm doing the second.
That reminds me. One final story here. Underneath here, I'm wearing my Chasing Karain shirt. I grabbed it out today because I was like, this is like one of the last few moments. This shirt's really no longer relevant. We're all chasing Amin now. But April, Pat, April was getting an absolute kick out of this shirt tonight, and she has like this really like precise attention to detail. Like in books, she like doesn't gravitate to the big things. She's always like, oh, there's the little duck or the little thing. And she just kept pointing at your face and cracking up tonight. And I would like bring her closer. And she's like, I think she just thought the head like on the ship was so funny.
It is funny. And I have a funny expression. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right, guys. We appreciate you. Congratulations again to everyone on the great years. We will see you around. And the next time you guys will see us on this channel Tuesday for the Boomer Opto Show with Son and Blair. Enjoy your week 18. Send me a